This is our signal.
John Haber and Ingrid Sorensen are ready for you.
This is our signal.
Imagine this for a second. You're walking through a dusty old west town. Okay, saloons, horses, that whole scene. The air smells like, I don't know, pine, sweat, maybe gunpowder.
Right, classic Western vibe.
Exactly. Now, picture that exact same scene. But instead of a lone cowboy, maybe it's a modern aerospace engineer walking down that main street.
Okay, that's different.
Or that muddy road. It's not just for horses anymore. It represents like a complex global supply chain, humming with data, not just dust.
Oh, okay. That juxtaposition is pretty wild. Sounds, well, almost dreamlike.
It does sound wild, doesn't it? But maybe it's actually a very specific, highly effective learning tool. And today, that's exactly what we're doing a deep dive into, this kind of unexpected but really powerful connection.
So bridging the Old West and modern complex systems, interesting.
We're talking about Charles White. He's a former NASA Lessons Learned Investigator, which is key here. And he wrote this really unique narrative called A Town Called Drybell.
Ah, okay, I've heard of this. It's not your typical Western.
Not at all. It's much more than just an adventure story for, pure entertainment. White meticulously crafted it. It's meant to be this powerful, immersive learning tool.
Specifically designed to get around the usual problems with learning from mistakes.
Exactly. To bypass the dry, frankly forgettable nature of traditional technical reports, those post-mortem analyses, and definitely those dry PowerPoint failures we've all sat through.
Right, the kind where the information goes in one ear and out the other because it's just bullet points and jargon.
Precisely. He's fundamentally weaponized storytelling, used it for profound knowledge capture, making these complex operational lessons really, truly resonate.
So making the lessons stick by embedding them in a narrative people actually engage with.
That's the idea. So our mission today is to uncover how he does it. How does White use this really detailed fictional Old West story to pull out these profound, actionable lessons?
Lessons that you can actually use.
Yes. Insights directly applicable to the kind of complex modern systems we deal with constantly. Things like intricate global logistics, tough corporate leadership challenges, and yes, even the super sensitive, highly interconnected world of aerospace engineering.
Which makes sense, given his NASA background.
Totally. We'll explore his creative use of narrative, how it just transcends the conventional, often pretty ineffective learning methods, how it delivers insights that actually stick, offering maybe a shortcut to being really well informed about critical systemic vulnerabilities.
So it's about making abstract risks feel concrete through story.
That's a great way to put it. So, okay, let's unpack this. How does a war over timber in some fictional rough-and-tumble frontier town become a blueprint for avoiding catastrophic failures in our world? What's the trick?
Well, I think it's an absolutely brilliant approach, and what's particularly fascinating, for me anyway, is how White takes something potentially really abstract, like lessons learned from, say, a failed space mission or a huge engineering project.
Yeah, stuff that usually lives in reports.
Exactly, and he imbues it with the raw, the visceral human experience of the American frontier. He's found this incredible way to make abstract systems, failure points, even, human biases feel immediate, personal, unforgettable.
So you don't just read about a system failure.
No, you feel it. You feel the tension of its components straining. You feel the consequences when things go wrong.
That's a really crucial observation. And he pulls that off by starting with a setting that feels like, well, almost like a character itself. It grounds you immediately in this palpable reality.
Right. Drybell's fictional, sure.
But its world is deeply, deeply rooted in what White calls the crucible of the American West in the decade following the Civil War. And that choice isn't random. It's not just a crate backdrop.
No, it's absolutely deliberate. That specific era, the post-Civil War West, was just this intense period of unprecedented expansion, industrial ambition, and violent friction.
A real pressure cooker.
Totally. Massive opportunity, but also incredible fragility. So by setting the story there, White lets us understand these powerful, often pretty brutal forces that shaped modern America.
Forces like
rapid technological change, resource exploitation, unresolved social conflicts, all through this tangible, highly relatable lens. You can almost feel the historical weight, the lingering trauma in every interaction.
It's baked in.
It really is. It's not just context. It's like a living character, breathing that trauma, discipline, and capacity for violence from veterans, both Union and Confederate, into every scene.
And that tension, right from the start, it sets the stage for how quickly things can fall apart.
Right.
How order can just evolve into chaos when those underlying issues aren't dealt with.
Which is a lesson profoundly relevant to any organization, any system navigating rapid change or stress, isn't it?
Absolutely. And he populates this environment with characters who are clearly products of it.
Yeah.
You've got Silas, the quiet observer,
Right.
Maye, the sharp-witted ranger, Ezra, the pragmatic mill owner, and Tobin, the charismatic but dangerous idealist.
Each representing different facets of that time and place.
Think about Silas's first impressions when he rides into Drybell. These aren't just pretty descriptions. He sees the muddy main road split the buildings like a creek through dry rock.
Yeah, immediately suggesting the sort of tenuous control over nature, over the environment.
Right. And the saloon with its shutters half open and the porch crowded with boots, it hints at this hub of activity, maybe volatile activity.
Always a focal point in those towns.
Then there's the general store. It has axes in the window, barrels of oats, right next to boxes of blasting caps.
Creation and destruction side by side, tools for building, tools for blowing things up. That contrast is a lot.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he even notes the smells of the pervasive mule stink mixed with the underlying scent of fresh sap.
Those sensory details really ground you.
They're not just details, they're anchors. They establish the place, the rawness of the resources being fought over, and that simmering tension that just permeates everything. It's all there, the raw materials, the tools, the conflict brewing underneath.
And those sensory details, I think, are more than just atmosphere. They're actually critical to White's method for transferring knowledge. That mule stink, the fresh sap, they ground you, the reader, in the immediate physical realities of the industry.
The timber operations.
Exactly. It foreshadows the brutal, interdependent nature of it all. And as White points out, the real historical West was just rife with range wars, violent disputes over timber and mining claims.
Towns completely controlled by railroad barons.
Absolutely. So Drybell might be fictional, but it mirrors a very real, often incredibly violent historical reality. And what's truly brilliant, I think, is how White uses these visceral, almost gut-level details to make the concept of interdependence feel way more intuitive than, say, some abstract data model ever could.
You feel the connection.
You feel the grime, the sweat, the risk involved in just being part of that system. It creates this kind of environmental intelligence, an almost instinctual grasp of the components and their risks.
Which is often missing from those dry reports.
Totally missing, but it's vital. Whether you're running a timber mill back then or managing a complex aerospace assembly line today, you need that gut-level feel for the system's vulnerabilities.
And nothing brings that tension, that interdependence, to a boiling point, quite like the railroad. White explicitly calls it the Great Disruptor.
Yeah, that line stands out.
Its impending arrival, the spur line, is clearly stated as the event that forces every conflict in this story to a head. It's not just about convenience, it's existential.
For a town like Drybell, yeah, the railroad was everything. It was literally the difference between explosive growth and being wiped off the map.
Life or death for the community.
Absolutely. Control of that rail access determined the whole region's future. So that immediate high-stakes impact makes the abstract idea of disruption feel incredibly visceral, incredibly personal, and an entire town's survival hanging on one infrastructure project.
It's such a clean illustration of how one big shift, technological or infrastructural, can just redefine everything overnight.
And it resonates so much today, doesn't it? You think about digital transformation, AI, how quickly they can reshape entire markets, entire industries.
Oh, completely. How often do we see that today? The internet and retail, renewable energy versus fossil fuels, maybe quantum computing and cybersecurity down the line.
Exactly. The railroad in Drybell isn't just a plot point. It's a stand-in for any fundamental disruptive force that hits a complex system. It forces every player, every stakeholder, to adapt or, well, face becoming irrelevant.
And its arrival also cranks up the already harsh realities of frontier life. Silas sees this immediately when he starts working at the mill. He gets that blunt welcome from Stumpy. "Welcome to the noise!"
Ugh, that phrase, welcome to the noise, it just encapsulates so much, doesn't it? The mill is shown as this place of constant deafening motion. Shouted orders, lash high, drop it, clear.
No margin for error.
Practically none. And the consequences are immediate, severe. Accidents aren't just possible, they're grimly expected. There's that chilling line, it's just meat.
Yeah, when Niles gets hit by the log.
And the saw doesn't even stop. That single detail, the relentless, unforgiving pace, powerfully emphasizes the raw, brutal, sometimes dehumanizing nature of these interdependent systems.
Especially in high-pressure environments.
Exactly. It's a vivid picture of how even seemingly small system failures or just the sheer pace can have devastating human costs.
And White really hammers that home with the sensory details. Silas feels sweat was deep in Silas's shirt. The dirt under his nails had turned black with sap.
You feel the physicality of the work.
Yeah, he takes a blow to the hick from a dropped lash and a chunk of bark in the eye, but said nothing. You just keep going, no matter the cost.
It's a brutal environment.
But even in all that noise, all that demanding work, Silas, our observer, he's already noticing things, finer details. He sees that finer thread of smoke in the distance, different from the mill smoke.
Ah, the early warning sign.
A subtle hint of trouble brewing, way beyond the obvious daily grind.
And that subtle observation is just profoundly critical, isn't it? It's a core lesson. White embeds here. It shows individual vigilance, that almost uncanny ability to spot anomalies.
A skill you need anywhere things get complex.
Absolutely. Think aerospace. Small, tiny telemetry deviations, a faint, unusual hum in an engine. These can be the first signs of a huge system failure, maybe even catastrophe.
The canary in the coal mine.
Exactly. White shows how human intuition, that sharp observation honed by experience, can be the absolute earliest warning system. It highlights how vital that human element is, spotting the faint signals that reports and sensors might miss entirely.
Which leads us right into those early cracks appearing in Drybell's very fragile piece. Even before the big blow-up, Ranger May Donahue brings in some logs, looks like they're stolen.
Right.
And this prompts Ezra Krauss, the mill owner, to make a distinction. He talks about ghost cutters versus scrappers.
And this distinction seems minor at first, but it's actually huge. It sets the stage for the real nature of the threat they're facing.
Explain that. What's the difference?
Well, ghost cutters are described as, local nuisances, maybe homesteaders taking a tree or two for a barn. It's petty theft, individual need. Annoying, but manageable.
Okay.
But scrappers, there's something else entirely. Organized crews, many are veterans, they move like a cavalry unit, steal a whole wagon load, and crucially, they leave marks on trees coordinating their work.
So it's systematic.
Yeah.
Professional, almost.
Exactly. Ezra explicitly says they're not just poaching timber, they're trying to break us. That immediately raises the stakes. It introduces organized, malicious intent, not just petty theft. It signals a deeper, more insidious threat to the whole community's stability.
A different category of problem.
It's learning to differentiate between minor incidents and, strategically motivated attacks aiming to destabilize the entire system. That's a key lesson.
And Silas has this internal thought that just nails the underlying tension, why Drybell is so vulnerable. He thinks, some men here fought for a wage and others fought a war that had never ended.
Oof. Yeah. That lingering war, the unhealed wounds from the Civil War, the ingrained animosities, the existing biases, that's what makes the community fertile ground for manipulation, for exploitation.
And Silas connects the dots. He sees that fine thread of smoke earlier, then he finds a marked tree near his camp.
And he doesn't make a fuss, he just quietly sharpens his axe.
Right. He's synthesizing these different data points, these seemingly unrelated observations. He's building this mental model of an organized, hidden conflict before anyone else really gets it.
Which is exactly what happens in root cause investigations, right?
Yeah.
Or risk assessments. Whether you're Silas in the woods or a NASA analyst looking at weird sensor readings, you connect the dots.
But this hidden conflict, it doesn't stay hidden long. It escalates dramatically with what White calls the first spark. The murder of Rule.
Yeah, this is pivotal. It's not just a crime, it's meticulously staged, designed to weaponize tragedy.
And this is where White's storytelling really makes you feel the mechanism of failure. It starts with an accident, right? A man named Amos gets injured by a tree falling badly in Mooncut Hollow.
A workplace accident. Tragic, but understandable in that environment.
But then Tobin Riley, our charismatic antagonist, makes this ruthless, chilling call. He decides to silence Amos, says he's seen too much, wasn't worth trying to save him, cold.
Utterly ruthless. And
Then he murders Rule, the young boy who unfortunately witnessed it all.
And that right there is the absolute critical moment. That's where a manageable rivalry, maybe some tension between the mill and the mines, transitions into bloody war.
It wasn't an accident spiraling out of control.
No, it was deliberate murder followed by sophisticated staging. They find Rule's body, but it's placed unnaturally, clearly meant to frame someone else. And that's when Silas says it. Something ain't right.
That's the foundational lie.
the foundational lie that ignites everything. It shows how one incident, through calculated deception, can be weaponized into a major crisis. It fundamentally changes everything, exploits all those pre-existing tensions.
It's a powerful lesson in how fragile trust is, how easily a fabrication can shatter it.
And once that lie is planted, it just spreads like wildfire. It morphs, takes on a life of its own. White writes that Drybell immediately generates 6 ways to truth about how Rule died.
Theories flying everywhere.
Yeah, from him being drunk and wandering into a falling tree, to some mill hand mouthing off anything but the deliberate murder. And the line, "No one knew his name," that only made it worse.
Dehumanizing him makes the speculation easier.
Exactly. It just glaringly exposes how vulnerable a community or any organization is to disinformation when trust is low and facts are scarce.
People just grab onto whatever fits their narrative.
The lack of solid info, plus all those existing biases, lets people repeating what they wanted to believe take hold. Those whispers become accepted truth. It shows how easily a group can fracture internally, not from an outside attack, but from the spread of unchecked narratives confirming suspicions.
It's a chilling parallel to today, with misinformation online.
Absolutely. Corporate cultures poisoned by rumors, nations destabilized,
Yep.
Same mechanism.
And it gets worse. Silas finds that MG Canteen Miner Guild near the staged body. Seems like proof, right?
The perfect plan.
And Ezra, the mill owner, he doesn't question it, he immediately jumps, "That damn mining crowd, we need to hit fast," and boom, they go torch a mining camp.
Based on a lie and a planted clue. No investigation, no verification, just immediate violent retribution fueled by confirmed bias.
It perfectly illustrates how easily a lie escalates things when it feeds what people already suspect.
And it forces us to ask that really uncomfortable question, doesn't it? In our own lives, our jobs, our politics. How quickly do we accept stories that just feel too convenient, the ones that confirm exactly what we thought?
Especially when emotions are high.
Right. And what are the real-world costs of not questioning? In aerospace, imagine a false story about why a component failed. Maybe blaming a supplier.
Yeah.
You could waste resources, redesign the wrong thing, fight legal battles, maybe even have another failure because the real root cause, maybe an internal design flaw or procedural slip-up, was ignored because the convenient lie took hold.
So Drybell teaches us, be deeply skeptical of information that perfectly fits your biases.
It really does. That's such a powerful takeaway, how fiction can illuminate these basic critical truths about human behavior.
And it doesn't take long for this spark, this lie, to ignite open conflict. It moves from whispers and staged scenes to outright aggression. Ephraim Case, the miner leader, he publicly accuses Ezra of running a private army, of staging Rule's death.
It's not just fighting anymore. It's psychological warfare, turning public opinion, framing the other side. Classic tactic in asymmetrical conflict.
Even the sheriff seems to know something's up, but maybe not the whole picture. He says things like, more going on than scrappers with saws, and that at least one man putting that puzzle together, but warns, if you think he's got the whole story well, you'd be wrong.
Yeah, he senses the complexity, the hidden layers. He recognizes partial truths, but knows there are missing pieces. That itself is a critical lesson, understanding the limits of your own information, especially in high-stakes situations. Never assume you see the whole board.
And things get personal, fast. Silas himself gets jumped, beaten badly, left for dead with a warning. Stick to logging.
So seeking the truth, or even just doing your job, becomes physically dangerous in this environment, poisoned by lies and violence. It's pure intimidation.
But right there, there's a small shift. Luther Finch, a character with his own complex past, finds Silas and actually helps him, unexpectedly.
Ah, that's interesting. It foreshadows shifting alliances, doesn't it? Maybe the threat is becoming bigger than the old mill versus mines feud.
It suggests that maybe survival starts to trump old grudges, a flicker of hope, maybe?
Or just pragmatism. This act of unexpected alliance is a turning point. It signals the crisis is growing beyond that simple binary conflict. It's forcing new, maybe uncomfortable alliances based on shared survival, not old hates.
And the ultimate impact of all this escalating conflict, this disinformation, the whole town collapses. Drybell becomes what Silas calls a broken machine.
Yeah, the railroad company pulls out, they react to the violence, call it an impediment to federally sanctioned commerce, and just pause the Spurline project.
The very thing meant to save them becomes the instrument of their ruin, temporarily at least.
And it halts the entire economy, instantly.
So what's the bigger picture here? What does this mean for us, beyond Drybell? White draws this really stark analogy, right? Compares Drybell's collapse to a military advance getting stalled because one single bridge is out.
Exactly. It's not just about timber or mining anymore. It's about the critical flow, the arteries of a complex, interconnected system. The mill goes silent. The mines become too dangerous because they can't get timber for shoring. Cattle get penned up, no market access.
Everything grinds to a halt.
And Silas's observation just cuts right to the heart of it. It wasn't a town, it was a broken machine. Each part depended on the others with a brutal intimacy. Every single piece, even if it seemed independent, was tied together.
It's a fundamental principle, isn't it? System design, resilience, especially vital in fields like aerospace, global logistics.
Absolutely. White explicitly connects it to military logistics failures. A single burned railroad bridge left 10,000 men without hardtack. A stalled supply wagon meant cannons without powder. It's about choke points.
In Drybell itself.
Drybell is revealed as a gear in a vast national engine, and its teeth had just been stripped clean. It just underscores how one single point of failure, often an unacknowledged dependency, can cascade, cause a total system collapse.
Grinding everything to a halt.
Think about it in aerospace terms. It could be a tiny degradation in telemetry from one valve on a spacecraft. Seems minor. But White's story screams at you that fine thread of smoke could signal a cascade if its links, its dependencies within the whole propulsion system or even back in its supply chain aren't understood and protected.
Like the lack of timber for the mines in Drybell.
Exactly. Or the lack of transport for cattle, the silence of the mill. It's a perfect visual of a system seizing up because one critical link is blocked or broken.
And the problems just keep piling up. The conflict gets even more complicated with poisoned waters.
Right, the environmental impact. Cattle start getting sick from river water contaminated by mining tailings, the slag heap.
Which pulls in another faction, the ranchers, who might have been neutral before. Adds another layer of conflict.
It does. But this is where Ranger May Donahue shows her clear-eyed thinking amidst the chaos. She points out the shared risk, the shared vulnerability.
What does she say?
She tells the angry ranchers, essentially, this is the same water Ezra uses to float logs. If it's poisoned, it hits him too. Don't be fools.
So the environmental threat actually reveals a hidden connection.
Precisely. This common external pressure forces different factions to recognize their hidden interdependencies. It challenges their old beefs because they realize they're actually reliant on the same resource, the same system. It's a classic case of how a shared crisis can sometimes force cooperation by revealing that opposing parties are actually in the same boat.
A powerful lesson in finding common ground when facing a systemic threat.
Yeah, when survival is on the line for everyone.
And then Bess Langtree, the methodical bookkeeper, not a fighter, but someone who deals in facts and figures, she uncovers an even deeper layer of truth.
Through her maps and ledgers, right. She's tracking the incidents.
Exactly. And she discovers the scrappers, the supposed enemy causing all the trouble. They aren't actually loyal to just one side, not just the mill or the mines, like everyone assumes.
So who are they working for?
They're hitting everything that could help the rail come through. Her chilling conclusion. They're mercenaries, paid by anyone or everyone.
Wow. So the conflict isn't just internal division, it's being actively stoked, maybe even orchestrated, by external forces with their own agenda related to the railroad.
It completely reframes the conflict.
And May Donahue reflects on this discovery, saying, we thought we had two sides, mill versus mines, but we've got five now, and none of them want the truth.
That reveals such a crucial dynamic, doesn't it? Simple binary conflicts, us versus them, they often mask this much more complex web of self-interest, hidden agendas, maybe external manipulation.
Understanding those multiple layers, those hidden actors, is essential if you want to actually diagnose and resolve complex problems. Whether it's a frontier town brawl or a modern multi-stakeholder project with tons of contractors and geopolitical angles, realizing the fight isn't just internal adds this chilling complexity.
And trying to navigate that kind of mess where you don't know who's allied with whom and truth is deliberately obscured, well, that takes a very specific kind of leadership.
Absolutely. And White uses his characters brilliantly here to show a whole spectrum of leaders and how their different approaches dramatically affect the outcome.
So let's look at them. First, Tobin Riley, the charismatic zealot who leads the scrappers.
Toby is driven by his past. An ex-soldier carrying deep bitterness from the war, feeling like it left us starving. He channels that into this warped vision.
A new republic where freedom isn't land deeds.
Yeah, some radical reordering of society. His leadership is charismatic, no doubt. He taps into the raw emotion, the grievances of his followers, but ultimately it's totally destructive because his vision is detached from reality.
And his methods.
Deception, lying about Amos and Rule, relentless escalation of violence. He eventually burns his own camp and pushes his men into a suicidal final attack on Drybell.
He's a tragic figure, in a way.
He is. His past trauma completely clouds his judgment, and he leads his followers straight to ruin because he's clinging to this unachievable, violent ideal. He perfectly exemplifies a leader blinded by ideology and personal grievance, willing to sacrifice his own people for a distorted vision.
That warped logic you mentioned earlier. They'll pave over your bones and call it progress. Chilling.
And it rings so true today, doesn't it? Leaders prioritizing some grand, destructive narrative over pragmatic solutions or people's actual well-being.
Then on the other end, you have Ephraim Case, the pure opportunist.
Case is all about personal gain. He sees the chaos not as a tragedy, but as a chance to grease the tracks with the cattlemen and get rich off the rails by playing factions against each other.
He tries to manipulate everyone.
Totally. Defies federal orders, fortifies his mind, thinks he can control the storm for his own profit.
How does that work out for him?
Badly. His short-sighted, purely self-serving approach, exploiting the division, ultimately leads to his own downfall. It shows that those who just try to play both sides in a crisis often lose control of the forces they thought they could manage.
A cautionary tale about unchecked ambition and, frankly, a lack of integrity.
Definitely. In any complex system, a corporate merger, a big infrastructure project, that kind of purely opportunistic behavior can destabilize everything. Self-interest can be just as destructive as outright malice when things get critical.
Okay, so Tobin the Zealot fails, Case the Opportunist fails. Who's left? Ezra Cross, a mill owner, the resilient pragmatist.
Ezra's interesting because he's not perfect. Remember, he initially reacts with violence, burning that camp based on the planted canteen.
Right, he jumped the gun.
But he evolves, he learns, he absorbs immense pressure, he makes those difficult alliances, even recruiting miners he used to fight against. And crucially, his focus shifts entirely to restoring order and function. Survival of the system becomes paramount.
He gets that line, "We don't get to choose what we build it on. Sometimes it's pine. Sometimes it's fire."
Exactly. That sums up his pragmatism. He understands you have to work with the reality you're given, however harsh. He takes decisive action, getting the Rangers deputized, turning the mill into a fortress of labor.
And his offer to the miners.
Double wage. You help us hold Drybell. And when it's over, you walk with honor or ride with them. It's pure pragmatism. It unites different groups under one common, immediate goal: survival.
That sign Bess Langtree puts up, "Stand or burn." It really captures the stakes and Ezra's leadership in that moment.
It does. He's the leader who adapts, builds bridges, prioritizes the system's survival over factional wins. That quality is just invaluable in any complex, high-stakes environment like aerospace engineering, where collaboration under pressure is everything.
So all these leadership styles, all of the tensions, the lies, it all comes to a head in the climax, the Inferno, the final battle for Drybell.
Tobin's last desperate gamble. He targets the sheriff's office first, trying to get ammo. Then his goal is to burn the mill, the town's economic heart.
And Silas's vigilance pays off again here, right?
Absolutely crucial. It's a testament to White's focus on paying attention. Silas hears that distant whistle, a signal, something only his honed awareness picks up. Silas didn't wait. Then came the shot. His quick reaction, based on that subtle cue, gives Drybell a vital edge.
Buys them a moment.
Just enough. But the battle still turns the town into a war zone. Chaos, gunfire, fire consuming everything. It's a graphic, unsparing picture of the ultimate cost of letting conflict and disinformation run unchecked.
White doesn't hold back on the imagery, does he? Tobin Riley led the charge torch in one hand, rifle in the other. The deputy's office exploding, igniting stored ammo. Flames roared outward, turning night into day. Chaos reigned.
It's visceral. You feel the breakdown, the structure dissolving into pure destructive anarchy as those foundational lies finally bear their terrible fruit.
But right in the middle of that chaos, the fire, the gunfire, comes the most powerful revelation. The unveiling of truth. White calls it the lost creed.
Yeah, this is stunning. At the peak of the battle, Tobin Riley just breaks. His mind snaps, maybe under the pressure of the delusion, and he starts ranting.
And in the rant,
He inadvertently confesses everything. Spills the truth about murdering Amos and Rule. The architect of the lie reveals it himself, unintentionally.
wow. So the core truth doesn't come from investigation, not from ledgers or reports.
Nope. It spills out in a moment of crazed confession on a burning battlefield. It's such a powerful narrative turn. It highlights that sometimes the deepest truths emerge not from careful analysis, but from the catastrophic breakdown of the system that created the lie in the first place.
His words were meant to rally his men.
But instead, they expose the fundamental lie that fueled the whole damn conflict. It causes this shared bewilderment among Drybell's defenders, a sudden shocking shift in understanding.
It's incredible narrative irony and deep psychological insight from White.
And the reaction from Tobin's own men is immediate. Emery, one of his scrappers, who fought fiercely based on those lies, confronts him right there.
What does he say?
You lied to us, Tobin. You just stood out here in front of God and Drybell and bragged about finishing him off yourself. Rule, he looked up to you. He thought you were building something real.
Devastating.
And then Emery, completely disillusioned, betrayed, shoots Tobin, declares, it wasn't the mill. It was him. All of it.
So the truth, once it's unequivocally out, breaks the spell, destroys the loyalty built on lies.
Shows the ultimate power of individual conscience, maybe, over collective delusion, and how foundational lies eventually consume the liar.
But the cost to getting to that truth, it's incredibly high. The aftermath is brutal.
Yeah, White is starkly honest about it. Bodies lay where they fell. 15 dead miners, mill crew, townsfolk, scrappers mixed together. A devastating toll.
No easy victories here.
None. He wants you to feel the weight of those consequences, the human cost of disinformation and unchecked conflict. But importantly, the town doesn't just wallow. They mobilize. They start rebuilding pragmatically.
Best Langtry's ledger again.
Just dead 15 with the names listed. A somber, almost bureaucratic accounting. Contrasted with Silas carving Pete's name into a beam, that quiet, personal act of remembrance, of commitment to rebuilding. It shows both sides of recovery, the systematic and the deeply personal.
And the railroad, the catalyst for so much of this.
They return, slowly, now, cautiously. The future for Drybell is possible, though it's scarred, forever changed. It survived because of the lessons learned in blood and fire.
And the story looks ahead briefly, showing the survivors' legacies. Ezra dies peacefully, respected. Finch finds redemption, leaves a landmark named Finch's Rise. May stays on as sheriff. Silas becomes his assistant foreman.
Right. It shows the community rebuilding, remembering its trials, but moving forward with that hard-won wisdom. It's a testament to resilience, adaptation, the leadership that finally emerged.
Which brings us right back to the core of why Charles White wrote this. His whole methodology for lessons learned, honed at NASA. This story isn't just a story.
No, it's a meticulously constructed tool for transferring critical knowledge. This is the payload, really.
This is the real aha moment, isn't it? Especially if you work in complex systems, aerospace, logistics, big teams. White isn't just telling a good story. He's running a simulation, an immersive simulation for real-world problem solving.
And he says it outright. As a former NASA Lessons Learned Investigator, I believe stories are one of our most powerful tools for knowledge capture. He's leveraging narrative for deep, sticky knowledge transfer that, let's be honest, traditional methods often fail at.
Those PowerPoint decks.
Exactly. He explains that fiction allows us to examine these failure modes in a controlled environment, making the lessons more intuitive and memorable. It's a direct contrast to the dry technical report or a standard case study.
Which might give you facts, but don't necessarily change behavior.
Precisely. His hope is that by experiencing the story, feeling the fear, the confusion, the betrayal, the clarity, the lessons resonate more deeply. They actually influence future decisions in a way data points alone rarely do.
So that's why he wrote Drybell this way, to turn abstract concepts about risk, about human behavior, into an emotionally impactful experience. One that leads to better understanding and, crucially, better application of lessons learned.
It's about moving from just knowing something intellectually to knowing it intuitively in your gut.
And he boils this whole rich narrative down into 3 key universally applicable lessons. The first one, the cascading failure of interdependent systems.
We saw this clearly in Drybell. All those industries, miners needing timber, loggers, ranchers needing transport, everyone needing the railroad, critically codependent. Railroad pulls out, the whole economic machine seizes up, not just one part.
And the lesson for us.
It's critical for any complex organization. Seemingly independent systems are often linked by unacknowledged dependencies. You might not even see the connection until it breaks.
And a failure in just one spot.
One single critical node, transport, communication, a key supplier, can trigger a catastrophic cascade failure across the whole network. Everything grinds to a halt.
We see this in the real world all the time.
White points to examples like the microchip shortage crippling global auto production, or a localized financial crisis threatening the whole global economy. The internet itself. The imperative, especially in something like aerospace, is to identify and protect these critical, often invisible dependencies before they fail.
So it's not just about the main components.
No, it's the whole intricate web suppliers, data flows, human processes, everything supporting the system. Imagine like one obscure company making a specific custom fastener goes under. Suddenly your spacecraft production line halts. Because that dependency wasn't seen or protected with alternatives, Drybell shows you that mechanism in action.
Okay, lesson 2, equally vital today. Disinformation as a strategic weapon.
The whole siege of Drybell was ignited by a single, deliberate lie. Tobin murdering his own men, framing the mill, exploiting that existing mistrust to turn people against each other.
And the lesson White draws.
The most potent threat to a stable society or organization is often not an external attack, but targeted disinformation that turns its own factions against each other. And, critically, a lie that confirms a pre-existing bias is more destructive than a bullet.
We see that playing out everywhere.
Oh, constantly. Political polarization fueled by social media, corporate cultures poisoned by rumors and infighting, international propaganda designed to destabilize countries from within. It's the same playbook.
So what's the defense?
It's not just censorship, which often backfires. It's fostering a culture of critical thinking, source verification, and a willingness to question narratives that feel too convenient, especially the ones that perfectly align with what you already believe or suspect.
How does this apply in, say, aerospace?
Think about it. A false rumor about a design flaw, a fabricated report about skipped maintenance, a targeted online campaign questioning safety protocols. Any of those could erode trust, trigger costly investigations, maybe even compromise actual flight safety, all without physically touching a piece of hardware. White shows how easily trust can be weaponized.
Turned into a destructive force itself.
Right.
Okay, and the third lesson, maybe the most human one, leadership defines the outcome of a crisis.
Yeah, the story gave us that powerful spectrum. Case, the self-serving opportunist. Tobin, the charismatic but delusional zealot. And Ezra, the pragmatist who absorbed pressure, built bridges, and focused on function.
And the takeaway.
The profound insight is that in a crisis, the most effective leadership is not always the most visionary or charismatic, but the most resilient and pragmatic. It's often not about the grand gestures.
It's about the hard work.
The tough, often unglamorous work of coalition building, making necessary compromises, and focusing on systemic stability over factional victory. This applies right across the boardrooms in a downturn, governments in emergencies, project managers overseeing critical developments.
Leaders are defined by how they handle pressure.
Absolutely. White concludes that those who absorb chaos and build bridges will succeed where those who exploit division or retreat into ideology will ultimately fail. Think about leading a complex space mission through unexpected trouble. You need that pragmatic, bridge-building approach. Prioritize function, collaboration, system integrity. That's far more effective and ultimately safer than some charismatic leader pursuing a narrow vision or personal gain.
So, Drybell, this fictional Western town becomes this incredible, almost visceral microcosm for understanding really complex modern challenges.
It really does.
Charles White's genius here isn't just telling a gripping story. It's using that immersive power of narrative to make these abstract lessons about system fragility, about disinformation, about adaptive leadership, truly stick with you.
It's such an innovative approach. It bypasses the usual dryness, the forgettability of standard reports, and uses the full force of human experience to actually embed the knowledge.
It's a powerful testament to narrative as a learning tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
A way to transfer knowledge that goes beyond just facts and figures. It hits you on an intuitive, emotional level that data alone just can't reach.
You feel the lessons. You don't just process them intellectually. And that feeling is what helps make them stick, make them usable later.
Exactly. So as you, listening, reflect on this deep dive into A Town Called Drybell, maybe take a second to think about your own world, your life, your workplace, your community.
What are the unacknowledged dependencies in your systems? Are there connections you haven't seen?
What ghosts of a forgotten war, maybe old grievances, unexamined biases, convenient narratives might be subtly shaping how you see things, how you act? Are they making you vulnerable, like Drybell was?
And are you consistently questioning the stories you're told, especially the easy ones, the ones that confirm what you already believe, no matter how comforting they might feel?
We really encourage you to seek out more stories like this, not just for entertainment, but as these powerful, immersive tools for critical thinking, for deep learning.
Because the ability to see those interconnected systems, to recognize disinformation when it creeps in, and to value that pragmatic, resilient leadership, those skills are more vital than ever in the complex world we navigate.
Keep digging, keep connecting the dots, and always keep asking, so what does this all mean for me and for us?
Thanks for tuning in to the Deep Dive podcast, where knowledge flows and questions last. We've powered down, but stay aware. This is our signal.
Systems offline, but memory stays bright. Truth echoes far beyond the night. We'll see you next transmission.
This is our signal.